Hi, Pete.
Hi, Jenny. Great to see you.
Great to have you. You know, when we were coming up with this series, International Exchange, you were one of the first people who came to mind because I know that you are such a partner in really valuing and understanding the role of international education at this university. So looking forward to talking to you about that. But I thought this would be a good way for viewers to get to know you beyond the titles and accolades and who you are and what drives your interest in internationalization.
Absolutely. Well, it's my pleasure to be here. And I am from France originally. I was born and raised in a city called Marseille, which is located in the southeast of France by the Mediterranean coast. And I was there until pretty much finishing high school. And then I was enrolled at the University of Aix-en-Provence. And that's when I looked into coming to the United States as a student. It was a time of my life where I was not so sure what I wanted to do. I mean, back then I was a DJ on a FM radio in France, so
That explains. I'm just going to interrupt you
Sure.
because your name popped out about a decade ago, and here's AP Durand, and he studies French hip hop, and for some reason that just stuck in my mind. So this goes pretty far back.
That's right. It goes way back. I was a DJ on the radio in France, and that's when late 1980s, early 90s. That's when hip hop became popular, including especially in France.
So is this hip hop from the United States or?
So initially it was hip hop from the United States, but it did eventually grow up into France and all over the world. But France, I guess that could be a topic for another time. But France has the second largest market for hip hop products in the world after the United States. So it's the place where in the world where hip hop is the most popular after the US, of course.
Okay. Well, I know people will want to know any favorite bands from the 80s.
Yeah, well, so for the French most famous rapper who really made French hip hop known is MC Solar. That's his name. But I'm a big Dr. Dre fan from the US side. But this is old school,
Okay,
right?
I'm of your generation. I have a real appreciation for 80s hip hop.
Yes.
And so you were a DJ, you wanted to kind of look.
Yeah, so it was a time of my life where I was not so sure what I wanted to do really. And in France, back in the 1980s, the economy was really tough. So at the time I thought, well, I never had a study abroad experience for a long time. I mean, I had traveled a little bit, but not as a study, as a student. And so I looked into that. There were American students who were exchange students at my university. So I talked to them. You have to remember, these are the days before internet. So you had to actually talk to people, and they will, you will write a letter to the universities, and they will send you the information. And initially, I was thinking to come for at least a year to be able to know English pretty well. And so that's how it came up. I mean, another thing why the United States, I was really interested into the US in particular because my grandparents from my mom's side, they were big, especially my grandfather. He was a big fan of America. He was a car mechanic. And he had always been interested in the US. So he would always talk about it with my grandma. They had been there. And so, that's something that I had on my mind. And this whole notion about the land of opportunity, if you come to America, you can make it there. And, it's been my experience. So that's how I came, initially. And then after I got here, I liked it.
And what university was that?
So I first came to a university in Kansas. It's called Emporia State University.
Okay.
It's a public university in Kansas, and that's where I started.
Was that your first time in the United States?
It was not my first time in the United States. It was my second time, but it was my first time in Kansas, and also as a student.
Well, I love the fact that you were a former international student. I didn't know this, and I'm sure many don't, and I'm sure you have a real, either sympathy or understanding or appreciation of being someone who from a very different country, landing in a place you hadn't been for the purpose of study. What was that like?
Absolutely. I came in that's right, on a F1 visa as an international student. That was my first experience. I had several possibilities, but Kansas, my parents, they really liked that idea because it was by far, it was way cheaper. Because I come from I was the first one in my family to go to the university, and my brother. So my parents, I mean, they were doing fine, but they were not. They could not have afforded like some of the other schools, and so that's how I came. And I have to say that in my experience, I loved it from the beginning.
So you were welcomed.
I was very welcome. I got to play on the soccer team, and it was a club, but I felt like, this whole notion about you, there was a lot of support, a lot of assistance. At least that was my experience. I know that it could be different depending on your own experience, but in my case, I had a very good experience. There was a lot of support at the university for international students. I was the only person from France in the entire town, maybe even, not just the university. So that forced me right away to speak, to quickly acquire the English skills, to be able to speak English, because my English was not very good when I first arrived.
Well, you probably didn't have many people to speak French with.
That's right. When I was there, I didn't have anybody to speak French with, and so that helped in that sense. But I really liked when I was in France. I mean, I was not a bad student, but I was really an average student, and also I have always been interested in literature. French literature was my favorite topic, and languages.
Was that your major at the time?
It was, well, so my major was actually in France. You have to pretty early on in high school, you have to already choose a track. So my track that I'd chosen was humanities and languages. But back then, and I don't know if it's still the case now, but back then, the big emphasis was about you to be considered an outstanding student. They would look at, are they good in math and physics? This was the main, And so me, I was good in the stuff that were not really, But then when I arrived to the US, paradoxically, I come to America, and those things, they were valued, like people, some professor who, I remember the whole notion of having an advisor, I'd be like writing letters back to my parents because, again, no email at the time. And I'd be saying, yeah, I actually have a personal advisor. Like I can ask them stuff, and they give me advice on classes. And then those are people, along with my professors, and faculty, that they will value those things. They will say, well, you seem to, that seemed to be your favorite topic. That seemed to be what you like to do. Why don't you do that? And I was like, yeah, So this whole notion that, I could be the poster child for the thing about, coming to America and like changing your life. That was like that, I got there and I had never been told like, yeah, those things that you're interested in.
Well, I think you mentioned that you were among the first in your family to pursue a college degree, and then on top of that, to pursue it abroad, on top of that, in a place where you didn't already have family or connections.
Yes.
And to have such an environment that supported you, that must have been so transformative.
It was a huge transformation, and I'm so grateful to my parents that they let me do this, that I had that experience.
Well, I love the fact that you can relate to so many of our own students who are facing that even today. This very similar stories. I'm also from a working class background, and oftentimes as the first generation or among the early generations, there's a lot of pressure to pursue a major that ties in directly to a job in order to make that investment worthwhile. And so I think for many of your students, but even from your own direct experience, pursuing the humanities may be relatively new. I understand in many European systems, there is no liberal arts gen ed type of requirement. You go straight into the major. So how did you go straight into the humanities?
Yeah, that's correct. So in France, there is no gen ed, general education requirement at the university. You do that actually in high school. And so once you start at the university, you already have to choose right from the start what is it that you want to study and major in. And it's very difficult to change after that, unlike the United States. So for me, doing my studies in the US, it was great experience because not only I was able to pursue my love for the humanities, more specifically literature, French literature and languages. I was also a Spanish major. But also, you can do more than one thing. And that's what I love about the American system, is that you can apply those things. So in my case, when I came to America, I wanted to study, I was a business major. I did a business administration. And now that I'm dean of a college, I'm so glad I did that. But the beauty of it is that you could still do something else. You don't have to choose one or the other in the American system. And so in my case, that meant that I was able to double major, triple major actually, with French Lit and with Spanish. And I remember back then at the time how helpful to each other those disciplines were. Like, when I was in the business classes, my humanities background would always come into place because if we would do group project, often I would be the one ending up writing the report or doing the presentation. But then in my humanities background, those organizational skills and those things that I would learn from the business side, telling the story, there was the branding and the marketing. A lot of our students studying languages and study abroad is a very important component for us because we believe that it's not only like, of course, it means that you have to be able to communicate and to work with people from different cultures from all over the world. We have to communicate with each other. But also by having those experiences, you broaden your horizons, your perspective. You show that you can handle things outside of your comfort zone. And that's extremely important. Even if you're never going to move abroad or you're never going to do anything international, having those skills and that you acquire by studying a language or by doing study abroad, they are extremely helpful no matter what you do, no matter the career.
Would you say this is even more so now than in the past, where jobs are being replaced by AI, or there's more automation, there's less applied work? Where you mentioned a family member was a car mechanic, that has changed over time. And so, this is my observation just based on what you said, but what do you think? Do you see there's even more of a need, or has it just always been this way and we appreciate it now more than before? By the way, I'll mention for folks who haven't seen, you have a TED Talk where you describe much of this. And I remember the signage, humanities equals jobs, and I see how you're doing such a wonderful job just demystifying what the humanities is and the kind of opportunities. But going back to my question, how is this now compared to the before?
So I think it has always been there, no question about it. The major differences that we see is that today, more than ever, we have to advocate for it. So what's unfortunate is that around the country, for instance, you have many places where the humanities are decreasing or they are being closed because people are not aware of what we are aware of here. And here, we have been very fortunate at Arizona with the support of the administration, but also with the other deans from the other colleges, that we are seeing the same way.
Well, this is where the relationships come in, the partnership, the interdisciplinary, the human-to-human side of what we're doing here, and really how humanities touches upon all of these fields and in many ways enables us to be successful in them. I want to also talk about our mutual interest in internationalization, because it's not separate, it's actually so embedded. A number of area studies programs within the humanities, your own personal experience. I know the humanities is among the leaders in faculty-led study abroad and students who study abroad. How do you bring in your own international experience and passions into your role as Dean of the Humanities?
It's extremely important. It's extremely important to not just only focus on our own language, our own city, our own country. I think that we are better off as a species, and the world is a better place if we train people and we educate people with these broader perspectives, because that's more enriching. You have all of these different perspectives and opinions that will come into place. And the United States, but it's the same in France or any country. Sometimes people forget that, or they assume that it's by only going around. This should only apply to you if you plan a career to go abroad, right? But it's not true. Right here in Tucson, you have so many different people and so many different cultures that are represented, and languages for that matter. So this is really at the core of who we are. It doesn't matter if you stay in Tucson. Critical thinking, flexibility, and adaptability, and being able to communicate and work with people of different cultures and ethnicities. That's important right here. You don't have to go abroad or to have a passport for that. And with also the way to convince students, which was one of the way I got convinced myself, is that it's a lot of fun. It's very interesting, it's very enriching. The fact that you can do those kind of things that are so much in demand. I started getting into Portuguese, and I was another, very good story of why I'm such a big fan of the United States universities and system is that when I was in graduate school, I obtained a scholarship, a FLAS scholarship to go study Portuguese in Brazil. And so it was like, a second study abroad from the US to Brazil. And, it really had a big impact to this day. I still work with Brazil. The problem with this is that now when I speak Spanish, unless I speak very slow, if I speak at normal speed, it becomes portañol. That's what people say, it's a mix of Spanish and Portuguese.
So I'm dating myself, but when I went to the university in the very early 90s, the humanities was history, British literature, foreign language, philosophy. That's how I understood the humanities to be. Was it really that way? Has it evolved? How would you describe it today compared to the past?
One thing that has changed compared to the past, and for the better, and that's what we are trying to do in our College of Humanities, and this is one of my objectives for the future, is that to break all silos.
Well, and especially as workforce needs are changing, we need to be more creative, more adaptive, more critical thinking, more imaginative in many ways, even with the AI coming in and supposedly taking over jobs. I mean, where do you see the humanities in the future?
Yeah, I think, for years and maybe centuries, we always have these things about, that's the end of the humanities are dying, or when the calculator first came up, well, what's going to happen now with math, or, will they allow that? Now it's like, ChatGPT is the new thing. They're always going to be stuff like that. And it doesn't matter, the humanities, all of those things, they will still be there. But what is very important, and that's a humanity skills, is adaptability. What you cannot do is to just say, that's the one thing that I don't like to hear when people say, well, we have always done it this way. You can do that. You cannot do that. It's very important for our students, if you're going to be like the example I gave from my own trajectory, I'm very grateful that I studied literature and the humanities, but I'm also glad that I studied business, because for the things I'm doing now, I'm using everything that I have studied.
Well, going back to just talking about global problems, I actually have some empirical data to support exactly what you're saying, because my research has been on international scientific collaboration, and it's not just the right formulas or having the right equipment or even knowledge base, but what really formed that successful collaboration was shared culture, oftentimes shared language, and ability to communicate across borders. That was so fundamental, but oftentimes that's not what's showcased when we see these big awards and these big breakthroughs. That underlying foundation that enabled a scientist from one country to collaborate with someone another to make those big breakthroughs and discoveries. Again, not getting enough credit here for all the ways that culture and shared values, ability to reason and ability to work across difference has been so foundational to addressing many of these global issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it reemphasizes this idea of collaboration and do it as a team. It doesn't matter what the topic is. It doesn't matter what the challenge is. You need everybody on board. It's the same for us as leaders when we lead our organization. We don't just say, well, it's only going to be this faculty or those faculty we're going to deal with that. It's like everybody's on board. Everybody's part of the team, and everybody bring their own contribution. Why should we try to do it without a big piece?
Yeah. Well, and everyone is valued for their contribution as well. They each bring in a unique perspective. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
All right. So this is a question I ask all of our guests. It's a way to get to know you more on a pretty fun level that they may not already know. So tell me, AP, what is your favorite French expression? And you also have to tell me what it means.
Yes. So this one is an easy one because I do that all the time. I'm kind of known for that in the college or at the university. It's droit au but, and droit au but it translates as straight to the goal. And I'm a big soccer fan, and my team is Olympique de Marseille. It's a team in France, a soccer team, and their slogan is droit au but, straight to the goal, like to score the goal, right? And I often thought about this, and I said that's it. It's kind of like at the University of Arizona we say bear down. It's kind of the equivalent, I think, of that. But this idea of like, let's go straight to the goal.
And it's something you tell your college.
Yes, in fact, my marketing team, because I say that all the time, sometimes I put that in my signature. So they created that. I should have wear it today, I forgot. But we have those badges that say straight to the goal.
Say that one more time so we can.
Droit au but.
Okay, so I love food and I love learning about food from all different cultures. So I need to ask, what is a dish anywhere from around the world that you can eat every day?
Wow, this is so. Well, first of all, I'm from France, right? But also I love food from everywhere. It's a very difficult question. But if I have to choose one, that's also something that people know about me. But I would not recommend eating that every day. It's profiterole.
Profiteroles.
Profiterole is a French dessert, and so when I was appointed dean, they do this interview. They do that for all the deans. You probably have done it too. And one of the questions is like, what is something that people don't know about you? And I said, if there is profiterole on the menu at a restaurant, I must have it no matter what.
So there's lots of different kinds of profiteroles, with ice cream, whipped cream, chocolate. What is the appropriate profiterole?
Very good question. So the appropriate traditional profiterole doesn't have whipped cream. It's only the choux with the vanilla ice cream and hot chocolate poured on top. But I have to admit, I prefer the one with the whipped cream.
So it's a little Americanized.
Yeah, a little Americanized.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Be sure to look for that. So here's a tough one for you because I know you've traveled in many places in the world, but there was a place that you would especially like to go back to. Where would that be? Not in the United States.
Well, I would have to say, besides France too, which is my country, I have to say Brazil. That's a country I often go to and go back to, and I just thought I would answer that so to make sure that I will continue doing that.
Okay, well, you'll probably get some invitations. Any particular city or area that you like in Brazil?
So I like all of Brazil, although I've not been everywhere. But Rio de Janeiro is a very beautiful city. But I collaborated with a city called Florianopolis, which is in the south of Brazil, and Natal, which is in the northeast.
Okay, I'll add that to my list.
So Jenny, I think you have been to France before. What did you think?
I'm actually a little embarrassed to say that I do speak a little French, but it's so bad that I don't even want to try. But I did take it in high school as my foreign language requirement.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was actually among the first places I traveled abroad was in Paris, and I did all the touristy things, and I went back and I did the same touristy things. So next time I go, and I'll need some tips on just some of the things to do beyond off the beaten track. But I think there's just something magical about France and Paris, and maybe the ways that it's portrayed, maybe a lot of cinema, but it is such a beautiful place, and the food is divine.
Yes, well, good. I'm glad you had a great experience, and I would love to give you a tour.
Well, okay, I'll hold you up to it.
All right, good.